Okay, everyone. Everyone can come back to the room. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're coming to our last sort of formal presentation of the day, and we got in the proverbial second bite of the apple with Jodie. She's going to come and talk about. I said you were talking about VR and AR. She said no, it's AR and VR because AR augmented reality is becoming such a much bigger sort of opportunity in terms of VR. And I work for the Huffington Post, but actually we're part of a huge company called Post, which is part of Verizon. And with 5G coming in, I mean, AR is being seen as a fundamental technology in terms of competitive advantage and seeing how that can be used. So Jodie is a particular expert on this, and that's because she spent the last 10 years studying and integrating these, most notably as principal experience designer on the HoloLens project at Microsoft and principal UX at Leap Motion. So, Jodie, you're very welcome again.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it. So, as you mentioned, I've been working on this technology for the past 10 years. And so I've seen a lot of different things. And I'm curious, how many of you have tried augmented or virtual reality? Okay, good number of you. And how many of you use AR or VR at your job? Anyone? 1, 2, 3. Oh, good, great. So we have 4. So we have some advanced users here. Hopefully I'll share some insights with you that you find valuable. And for the rest of us, I will let you know about these technologies. So, question to the group. How many of you think that the primary use case is for entertainment, for VR? Good number of you. Okay, great. I'm sure more of you do. You just don't want to have me tell you why you're wrong. But, so let's talk about extended reality. So what I mean by extended reality is I'm referring to the suite of devices that describe a continuum of immersion from fully virtual with virtual reality to mostly real with the heads-up displays such as Google Glass. And if you're going to remember nothing else about this presentation, I want you to take away one important fact. And that is that the dematerialization that I talked to you about earlier today, well, XR is going to rapidly accelerate that in a dramatic fashion. So all of these things have disappeared into our computing devices when we were looking into the screen, when we were looking at the screen. But soon we're going to be looking through the screen at the real world, and things are going to change dramatically. First, we're going to see a dematerialization of objects, right? Physical goods that we have always thought of as being physical objects. For example, if I wanted to, I could rent a Rolex watch to wear up here on stage and impress all of you with how amazing I am for just a few minutes while on stage. And this is a very likely scenario as we see a whole generation of digital natives that are much more interested in having access to objects when they need them, as opposed to keeping them forever, right? And that's why we're seeing such a big influence of this rental closet. Nearly 65% of people under the age of 35 are interested in the rental closet, which means that they get a recurring subscription model of clothing that shows up for them. This is great for retailers because you can make the object once and sell it a couple dozen times. Well, when it comes to augmented reality, that's going to accelerate because now you can make the object once and sell it 1 billion times, 2 billion times. It doesn't matter. It will never, the quality will never diminish, and the value will never diminish. So we're going to see a massive dematerialization. It's already happening with makeup. We're going to see it happen with jewelry, clothes, different housing, right? So if you, home furnishing, sorry. So instead of having a painting on my wall, I can have whatever I want for that situation on my wall and switch it out very easily. We're also seeing a dematerialization of spaces, physical spaces, right? Already, researchers at NASA are using augmented reality, the HoloLens from Microsoft, in order to map the surface of Mars. They're getting the data from the Mars rover, and by putting it into this interface, by putting it into this tool, they're much more capable of identifying different landmarks, triangulating where they are in space, and coming up with an agreement of where they are. They tried doing this on a computer screen, and none of the cartographers could agree on where the landmarks were. But the minute they put it in here, there was immediate consensus about that information. So you can imagine, if we can walk on the surface of Mars using this technology, we can easily say, go to an office on the other side of the world and have a meeting. Or say, bring your office with you or your home with you when you travel. So we're seeing a dematerialization of spaces, which of course means we need to have a dematerialization of presence. What you're seeing here is haloportation from Microsoft. And this young lady, she's on the other side of campus from her father, but she could easily be on the other side of the world. And he sees her in his space in full 3D. So it feels as if he is actually present with her. Not like a video conference where I still know you're on a screen over there, or a phone call where I'm only hearing your voice. This type of technology makes it feel as if we are sitting face to face with each other, which of course makes collaboration much easier, because now I can collaborate with you in my space, and you can participate in my space in the same way. Imagine what this is going to do to business travel, right? If I can actually be here and then simultaneously be in South America, and then later that day be in Iceland, of course I'm going to use this tool instead of losing hours and hours and hours just sitting on a plane. Right? So it's going to change the way we do business across distances. It's also going to change our relationships with friends and family. I can't tell you how many times I wished I could hang out in my mom's kitchen while she makes dinner, and now with technology like this, I really can do that. Yeah? But even before that happens, we're already seeing this type of presence happening. So we have a lot of workers that are aging out, especially skilled workers. And it's really difficult to transmit your knowledge to younger generations. So people are using this type of treatment, which is the Skype on HoloLens. And this guy is an elevator repairman, and he's working on the piece, and he calls his expert, Heather, who can help him to understand what's happening right there on the device that he's trying to fix. And she could indicate spatially what it is that he needs to do. And when he turns his head to look away, it's not like the circles go with him. They stay where they're supposed to be. Right? So she's annotating his physical space, which helps them to collaborate much more easily. All of this adds up to a dematerialization of experience. Kevin Kelly says that now we have experience becomes currency. What he means by that is that I can literally have somebody else's experience and experience it for myself. It's especially important for things like empathy, where now I can experience somebody else's life for myself. This is a young lady here in Aleppo, and Nomi de la Peña, the godmother of MTBR, she created this experience so that a person like myself can see what it feels like to have a barrel bomb dropped on my neighborhood in Aleppo. And this type of experience has changed the way we talk about the Syrian refugee crisis around the globe, because suddenly people can experience what it's actually like to be there. Not watching something on the TV over there, but actually viscerally be present, physically be there, which is turning hundreds of millions of people into eyewitnesses to these things. That's especially true when it comes to the far end of the spectrum here, the fully virtual part of it, which is virtual reality. Virtual reality has been around for about 5 years in the commercial marketplace. As you can see, there's a number of devices that fit pretty much any budget that you can get to. The most interesting to pay attention to right now is this middle cost place here, this $199 cost point. We're seeing a number of very good VR devices come out at that level from both Oculus Go as well as the Samsung Odyssey HMG, which is running the Windows reality programs. And the one thing that these technologies do, very simple compared to your current computing devices, is that rather than having the screen at a literal distance between you and it, right, which requires the viewer to suspend disbelief, right? That's the phenomenon where the story is so compelling or the game is so compelling that the viewer imagines as if they are there. They have to work to ignore the literal noise happening between them and the screen and somehow picture themselves in there, which, believe it or not, takes some mental effort to do. So all that these things do is they take that screen from across the room and shove it right up against your face. So now, instead of watching it happen over there and having to suspend disbelief, you have to do something called suspension of belief. You have to tell yourself, this isn't real, this is not really happening to me, this is something that's happening on a screen. The reason this happens is very simple. We are hijacking your visual sense. To give you an idea of how important that is, take your hand, everybody Simon says, and put it on the back of your head. That's the size of your visual cortex. And it's implicit in both sides of your brain. Simon says, put your hand down. Right? And so that means that it's very valuable to our brains. Okay? We've developed over 200,000 years to use that sense very effectively. So when we hijack it, you're not having a first-person experience, you're having a you-person experience. That's what Kevin Kelly from Wired calls it. He calls it a you-person experience. What that means is it's indistinguishable from your own personal experience. So if you've ever played one of those stupid roller coaster games in VR, you probably looked a lot like this on the outside. We used to play this game in the lab at SU, and we had to stop doing it because the lawyers were afraid that I was going to get sued when somebody fell over and got a concussion. Because what happens is your brain just cannot differentiate between what it's seeing and what it's experiencing. It's okay, you can laugh, right? I've shown this poor guy to everybody. Yeah, see, like he just fell over. It's ridiculous, right? It's really important because what's happening is that we're hijacking your visual sense, and your visual sense is your dominant sense. It's what you use to translate all of the other senses in your body. It's what you use to understand what you're touching, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, right? What you're hearing. That's how important visual sense is to us as human beings. And it's so powerful that we can trick your body into doing some pretty amazing things. For example, researchers at University of Washington's HIT lab were working with burn patients returning from war who had burns over more than 80% of their body. As you can imagine, these people were in excruciating pain, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's so bad that morphine only reduces their pain by 20%. Okay? That's nothing. That's like putting ice on a boo-boo. That doesn't really do anything, right? So what they did was they created this virtual reality game. And what you see here is an icy wonderland. So the first thing that happens is that the brain says, oh, that burning that I'm feeling, that's not burning. That's cold. I'm cold. And then the other thing that it does is it distracts you because now you're throwing snowballs at these poor little penguins and snowmen, right? So you're completely distracted from what's happening in the real world. Now, this game reduces pain by 60% without morphine. 60%. 20% morphine, 60% on virtual reality. Now, who wants to guess when we figured this out? Anybody want to guess this decade? Last decade? Really, are you guys not voting, or are you just not agreeing? How about the 90s? If you said the 90s, even though not a single person raised their hand, that is exactly when we figured this out, 1993. Now, why haven't you heard about this until now? Any guesses? Is it afternoon? Sorry. The reason you haven't heard about this is because the price of devices back in 1993 was somewhere around $60,000. But like I said, now you can get one of these devices for $199. That works really good. So now, Cedars-Sinai is working on clinical trials of something called Pharma VR. And they're seeing that it's really effective in pain management, anxiety, depression, dementia. all kinds of different ways. So there's a whole new burgeoning field called Pharma VR that is coming up, and there are a number of companies that are about to bring this to market because it's that remarkable. Oh, that's what I meant there. That's the one I was trying to get at. Right? So it's very powerful for that. So as you can imagine, if we can do that with VR, we can do a lot of other things as well. For that reason, XR accelerates learning. Okay? There's a big difference between book learning and kinesthetic learning, right? You learn about something in a book, and then it doesn't really click, doesn't really register until you put that knowledge into practice. That's when it turns from education to knowledge, right? And until very recently, that was something that was still really difficult. You could get access to the books, you could get access to lectures, but you couldn't get that hands-on experience. But with virtual reality, you can. So now, kids all over the world can go on field trips and experience what it's actually like to be there, to do these things. And I guarantee it's one thing to read about the human digestive tract in a book, and it's another thing entirely to physically go through it yourself. You just understand the data in a very different way. So XR is going to radically change the way we learn. We're going to be able to not only learn in grade school and high school, but for things like physical skills. This is Striver. It's from Jeremy Valentin's lab at Stanford University. And what it does is it's for American football, so not football, but football. What's happening here is that the quarterback is learning how to play against the opposing team. The way they traditionally did this is that they would get their team to pretend to be that other team, but now they can actually play against the opposing team. So they're learning muscle memory of what to do in these different situations. So it's more instinctual as opposed to something they have to stop and think about, which of course makes them more effective football players. But don't get confused. This is not just for football. It's also being used to train soft skills, such as these people that are learning how to do customer service for Walmart. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked at peopleofwalmart.com, but I can guarantee you they have some interesting customers that come through their doors. So they're learning how to deal with all kinds of crazy situations in the safety of virtual reality, where they can make errors, they can learn how to do, they can run different scenarios before they're ever put onto the floor. Of course, that's not just for soft skills. We're also teaching people physical skills or special skills training, such as this guy who's learning how to drive a forklift in virtual reality, using the same equipment as the forklift has on it. But now, instead of going onto the floor and risking injuring himself or his coworkers or the inventory, he can make all of his errors in virtual reality and become an expert before he hits the floor. So there's all kinds of industrial applications for this. There's Airbus, for example, is training door installers on how to put the perfect seal on that airplane door here before they put our lives at risk. But all kinds of other places as well. There's also skill translation, and Christine might be able to tell you a little bit more about this device. It's called the Da Vinci surgical machine. And what's happening is that the surgeon is doing laparoscopy, and he's doing it in virtual reality here. And the robotic machine, which is currently across the room from him, but could easily be on the other side of the world from him, is then doing the actual physical labor. And it corrects for any mistakes that he makes in his gestures through that system. So it's not just being used for surgery, it's also being used for mining. People who are mining in very dangerous areas, they're allowing remote control of those mining robots from a safe distance. Okay, so if that's what it can do for education, you can imagine what it does for our productivity. XR makes us incredibly productive. That's especially true for augmented reality, and this is why I call augmented reality the Serena Williams to VR's Venus, right? It's the bigger, badder, younger sister that has tremendous use cases. Right now, as you can see, most of these devices are actually not available to consumers. There's a couple that are, and that is in the form of the phones. The handset phones are going to be the primary device that most people have access to over the next couple years. The other two devices up there that are available to the public are the ODG, Osterhout Design Group, which is in San Francisco, and the DAQRI, which is in LA. Those are both available for industrial or military applications only. Okay? The rest of them are under development, including the HoloLens, which is I have the honor of working on. And that doesn't mean, so these are just about to hit the marketplace. But already, they're making a huge mark. This is coming. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, says AR is going to replace all of your computing devices within 5 years. They're rumored to be coming out with some crazy thing using Zeiss lenses and AI and a lot of really interesting technology by 2021. But Bloomberg estimates it's going to be a $10.8 billion industry by the end of this year. And there's going to be 1 billion devices in consumer hands, mostly in the form of the phone. And it's a two-pronged approach to the market. We have Microsoft and Google Glass 2, which is the Enterprise Edition, looking at enterprise and industrial applications. Their bet is that you'll start using it at work, just like we do with the PC. You'll start using it at work. You get so comfortable with it that you bring it home. And then the other prong of approach is the handset market. Okay, and this is where you're going to see the massive amount of adoption this year and next year. It's going to be a couple years before we all start wearing glasses or things like that. Now, this shouldn't be surprising to any of you, right? That Tim Cook says it's going to replace everything, because we already use AR every single day, right? How many of you use AR every day? A couple of you, okay. How many of you use GPS? Yeah, you're all liars. You use AR. What AR does is it ties the virtual to the real in a meaningful sort of way. When I say, do you use AR, you don't think immediately of GPS, because the way we use that is flawed. We look at the screen, we understand what's happening there, and then we translate what its relationship is to the real world. Okay? So we're busy doing this. Right? Now, if you look at this screen, even up here on this ginormous screen, there's a lot of content on there for you to understand. And usually, you're using GPS in a situation where you've never been or that you're really stressed out and trying to get around a problem. Situations where you should really be paying attention to the road and not doing this. Right? Now, the problem with this is that the human has to translate between the screen and the real world. And that means that there's two tasks going on, right? There's this task, the phone, whatever's happening on the phone, and whatever's happening in the real world. And you're constantly context switching, which is unfortunate, because the minute we add one more task, whatever we're doing, we cut either task, our ability to do either in half. And that's how we end up crashing our cars. Because we're distracted. We're trying to do the both things when we should only be paying attention to one. It's very easy to understand why this happens when we realize that our brains have very limited working or task-based memory. That's the memory that your brain, that's the part of your brain that's dedicated to whatever context you're in, whatever task you're trying to do. And every time we interrupt it, your brain wipes it out and starts over again. This is called the doorway effect. And I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. Let's say you're sitting on your couch and you're cold, and you think, I need a sweater. So you go to your room, and you walk through that door, and you say, why did I come in here? Right? Happens to me all the time. It's not just because you're getting older. It's just because that's how our brain is designed. What happens is that our brain is keeping the information of sweater, cold, on the couch while you're on the couch. So that's one context. And the minute you walk through that doorway, you're switching context, and your brain is being very efficient and saying, oh, we don't need this junk anymore. And so it dumps out everything about the couch and opens you up for new context of the bedroom. Right? Now, every time that we go between our screen and the real world, we're walking through a virtual doorway. Every time we have to stop what we're doing on our device to look at the operating system, you're walking through a doorway. So our brains are being constantly interrupted all the time by our devices. And every time we get interrupted, it costs us anywhere from 0.3 seconds to 30 minutes to get back to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Now, to give you an idea of the scope of this problem in everyday life, you touch your phone 2,600 times a day. You are interrupting yourself 2,600 times a day. And most of the times that you're interrupting yourself, it's nothing more than Facebook, email, Twitter. Facebook, email, Twitter, right? You're just kind of habitually looking at your screen. Every one of those is causing you to interrupt your thought process. It's for this reason that screens are markedly killing our ability to think. We're being so distracted by that busy noise level that we get from interacting with our devices that we're unable to use the attention to do that deep creative thought that human brains are so great at doing. So augmented reality fixes this, because now instead of switching context, you're looking through the screen at the real world. So now you're unifying the context of your tasks. They're all in the same context instead of doing this, yeah? So just to give you an idea of how much that alone improves our productivity, let's take a look at this example. Now the guy on the left, he's using a piece of paper, but really that's what our tablets are, right? They're magic pieces of paper. And the guy on the right, he's using a Google Glass. So it's not that it's a smart glass, it's just a heads-up display. Okay, so he's able to see everything in the same context. Let's go ahead and have this. So at first, the guy on the left is winning. And then suddenly, the guy on the right starts to take over. Because he's not having, see how this guy has to keep looking back and forth? This one's just looking at the same scene. And he's 34% more effective than the guy on the left. That's a tremendous time saver. And if that was all that AR did, that would be good enough. But there's more. Because AR understands the context. So you as a human don't have to explain to the computer what's going on. It knows, right? AR is basically putting machine vision and artificial intelligence on your head. So it sees everything you see, hears everything that you hear. And so it's able to understand the context of whatever it is you're doing and put the information where it belongs. So it translates for you. So instead of this situation where we have an electrical car that has been completely damaged in a car accident, when a first responder comes on this scene, they have to really figure out how did this become that, so that they don't electrocute you or themselves when they try to get you out of the car. But Bosch created this tool for Mercedes where they could just put up a tablet that will show the damage to the electrical system so that they can safely get you out of that vehicle, okay? Instead of me having to translate between this side table that I'm trying to buy for my new living room, right? Which, by the way, this exists already, so this is one of the #1 reasons for returns on Amazon and Wayfair and other home shopping sites, is that somebody orders something that doesn't fit into their house or doesn't match their decor, and so they send it back. And if you have free shipping, that's a massive cost loss, right? It's a big loss center. So now, Amazon and others are working on these AR tools so that I can hold up my phone, I can see that object, it measures my space for me, first of all. And then I can see the object in that space, see if it fits, see if it matches my decor, before I ever push buy now, okay? Instead of this situation, which actually happened to me, where I was trying to translate that Cyrillic sign into my QWERTY keyboard, which I guarantee is no. It was really bad. Now I can just say, hold up my Google Translate, and it will translate in real time. This is my absolute favorite travel tool ever, because it can translate up to 38 different languages in real time. Now, if you're trying to listen to audio, this might not help you, but Pixelbugs could. Pixelbugs translate 7 languages in real time, 7 spoken languages in real time. They're expanding that to 30 by next year. Now, I'll tell you, I've tried these. They sound great in theory, but they cannot differentiate between a background conversation and the conversation you're having right now, so it's a little confusing. But they're fixing that. They're fixing it. Yeah. So, if that's not enough, XR also adds space to computing. This is more important than you might think, because that visual cortex that I told you about, it's living inside of your spatial cortex. This is such an important part of your brain that my research hero, Mary Zawinski, says that spatial memory is free. Now, Mary came about this, as well as many others, by looking at the ways that we use spatial memory. We use it all the time, right? Over 200,000 years, this part of our brain has become indispensable. We use it to remind ourselves of something. We use it to, to understand the difference between objects. This is based on their dimensionality. We use it to understand things in an alphabetical list, right? What one piece of information is in relationship to another. This is also useful in timelines or maps or anything like that. We also use it in multitasking. So we're already improving our productivity because we're creating a single context of use, we're increasing the intelligence of our devices, and now we're adding space that is so powerful in multitasking that it improves your productivity upwards of 40%. This is especially true for women, by the way. Women, your productivity improves by 60% in this situation. Men, you get 30%. Sorry. But still, it's incredibly important. This is the trader desktop for Citibank. They're using it to help traders to be able to see multiple different stocks at the same time, and also be able to share that information with their clients. So this is really important because now instead of having to have multiple monitors, which are fixed in space, I can bring that spatial system with me wherever I go. It also improves workflow. So instead of the architect having to design something in 2D, right, which is really difficult for their clients to understand, and plus they're seeing it in 3D in their head, right? They can actually design it in 3D. And then when they go to show the client, or say a city planner, they can put it in situ. So now we can examine that product in situ and see what the impact will be on the environment. And then when they go to build it, instead of having to translate from 2D diagrams, they're building to the 3D diagram in space. And as they build it, it's automatically updating the drawings and other documentation so that when the inspector comes to inspect the building, they know exactly what's happened and why in that space. So it just streamlines so many processes across that workflow, right? It's not just one person's workflow that was improved, it's every single person in that chain. Let's talk about data. We talk a lot about data today, so much about data. To me, I can't read a spreadsheet to save my life. Unfortunately, that is true for a lot of the new emerging workforce. They don't have the 20 years of training that a good data scientist has in order to read this and see what's happening. To us, this spreadsheet looks a lot like this. I don't know what's happening.
Matrix.
Somebody told me there's a red dress. I don't get it. So what's happening now is that we can use virtual reality to add 3D AR, to add 3D to these numbers and completely change the way we understand them, such as this tool by ProtectWise. ProtectWise is a cybersecurity company, and I highly recommend you check out an article on the Singularity Hub by my colleague Aaron Frank about this company. But what they found is that by putting the data into this 3D metaphor, at a glance, you can see what's happening. Any one of us could. Even a layperson could. Which means that they can also mobilize an entire generation of digital natives who grew up playing video games to become powerful data scientists. Because now they can control this cyber neighborhood as if they're playing a video game, instead of having to spend 20 years training them on how to read data. Right? Now, it's not just for these kind of metaphors that look like a city. By the way, there's also Fidelity does Stop City for younger investors. I highly recommend checking that out. But not only could it be used like this in this type of metaphor, but just by adding dimensionality to data and allowing us to spin it around and look at it from different angles, it makes it easier to read any kind of data. We were working with a particular client that was trying to analyze millions of points of data And the way that they currently did this was by 2x2 grids on a piece of paper, yeah? So each time they would refine and refine and refine and refine, and that type of data analysis took them 2 days to do. Once we put it into a 3D, just a 3D visualization, not a cityscape, just a regular 3D visualization of data, their analysis went from 2 days to 20 minutes for a trained technician, and for a layperson, an hour to analyze that same amount of data. You can imagine the implications of that. So, all of that is all well and good, but now we get to the most important part of the talk, which is that XR amplifies our human abilities. In fact, it makes us superhuman. Yeah? Because it's not just output. It's not just like our current screens that are just displaying stuff. It's also input. Like I said, we have AI on there. We have AR on there. We have all kinds of sensors on there. Machine vision, machine language processing. So now it can streamline my processes together, right? It also makes us the human in the loop of cognitive computing. XR is your way of seeing that cognitive computing layer on the world and to interact with it in like a God mode, if you're video game terminology, not religion terminology there. God mode, right? So it puts us squarely in the loop of artificial intelligence, of machine vision, of machine learning, of all of these tools. So you basically have the power of a self-driving car on your head. And with that, you can augment your existing abilities. This is a tool from Panagram Partners for firefighters. And what's happening here is that the firefighter is able to see the feed from all of his fellow colleagues in the building. He can turn on different sensors, such as this one, which is using to detect the air contamination. And then he can see annotated on the ground and above him where the fire is on other floors. Now he's turned on his infrared, and he can see that that wall is about to catch on fire, so he can evacuate the room before he gets caught there, right? And it automatically updates all the other humans in that system that there's a fire that just broke out right there. So the people below and above him know immediately that there's a fire in that location, so they know to get out as well. Okay? So it's putting all of that cognitive computing to work for you in real time. And on top of that, because it's tied into this whole perceptual computing system, such as sensors, and we have brain sensors, we have eye tracking, we have body, like gesture tracking, we have biosensors, we have emotion detecting, all of these things. So with all that information, we can train computers to speak human. So instead of you having to learn how to push the buttons in the right order and do all the things and tell all the things to the computer, it can start to understand you and your natural interactions and activate on your behalf, okay? All it takes is a little bit of ergonomics. I'm sure you're familiar with that term, right? It's the practice of amplifying human abilities in any given system by adapting that system, yeah? So the most familiar is probably physical ergonomics. That's the way something is physically designed to help you get just that much more leverage or that much more oomph in your efforts, right? And when we apply this to this augmented reality, we can amplify our physical abilities within the system. For example, this is the Robonaut 2 here. It's the first humanoid robot on the International Space Station. For purposes of this conversation, what's most exciting about this robot is its hand. Because if you're familiar with robot hands, they're really good at doing gross effort, like big manufacturing tasks. But they usually are really bad at that fine-tuning, like picking up an egg. But this glove can do both, very easily and very effectively. The issue is that you kind of need a PhD in computer science to operate, which I don't know about you, but I don't have. And most of the people working on the line at GM definitely don't have a PhD in computer science. But GM wanted to use this glove, wanted to use this hand to do tasks. So what they did was they created a wearable glove out of it. So it's the whole actuator of the robot hand in the form of a glove. Okay, so it's like an exoskeleton. And now, with the effort of doing this, I can activate the robot hand. okay? And now, with the effort it takes me to lift 5 to 10 pounds, I can lift 15 to 20 without any additional fatigue to me as the wearer. I can also have amazing amounts of torque repetitively, over and over, without any fatigue, and way more powerful than I can accomplish on my own. Okay? So that's what happens when we add physical ergonomics. What happens if we do that for our brain? What happens if we adapt the system to amplify our brain's abilities? Well, we can do amazing things. It's especially true when it comes to XR because, like I said, we're communicating directly to the brain. There's no stopping. It's just directly feed to the brain, and we're processing it just like we do real-world sight. So this is my friend James Blaha. He had something called a lazy eye. That means that one eye is just not, the brain's just not paying attention to it anymore, and it tends to drift in the socket. Okay? It's called diplopia. And the thing about it is that doctors believed until very recently that after age 12, if you had a lazy eye, there was nothing we could do about it. Because that was the age at which your neuroplasticity stops. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reprogram itself, to rewire itself. And we thought that about age 12, there was no more doing that for human beings. Now, James was in his 30s, and he still had to fix his lazy eye, and so he went to the doctor and asked them to help him. And they told him, well, we can do a surgery that will make it look functional, but your brain will never actually bring it back online. You'll never have full 3D vision, even in the real world. It's not going to happen. James is very stubborn, and so he didn't believe that. So what he did was he created this game in virtual reality. Now what's happening here is that the video feed to one eye is just slightly different than the video feed to the other eye. And something amazing started to happen. After about a month of using this, his brain started to pay attention to the lazy eye. And he fixed his lazy eye in virtual reality. So he had full 3D vision in virtual reality. And then he took the headset off, and guess what?
That's normal.
He had full 3D vision in the real world too. He had somehow managed to rehydrate his neuroplasticities and able to reprogram his brain to pay attention to that eye. And it wasn't just for him, it was for people older than him. People in their 60s, 70s were suddenly able to fix their lazy eye. And now we're finding that this is effective in things like dementia and Parkinson's and all kinds of other ailments that require your brain to be able to rewire itself. And for that reason, XR gives us superhuman abilities, such as Wolverine. I know that's not Wolverine, I just don't want to get sued by Marvel. But, oh, I'm sorry. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's not Wolverine. Like I said, there's all kinds of ailments that require the brain to reprogram itself. None more so, guys, it's going the wrong way. None more so than paraplegia. Okay, paraplegia meaning you no longer have the ability to use your legs, okay? Now, the part of your brain that controls your legs is called your motor cortex, and it runs from ear to ear, like this. And there's different parts of your motor cortex that control different parts of your body. There's one for your hand, there's one for your eye, there's one for your mouth, and there's one for your leg, which is located about here. And we have sensors that can read your brain activity. So what these doctors did is they put a sensor on outside of the brain. It's not like they drilled into this guy's head or anything like that. They just put a sensor cap on him. And they trained him to be able to, 8 different patients actually, they trained them to be able to control a pair of virtual reality avatar legs using that part of the brain. So exoskeleton, much like that glove, that moves the legs for you. Okay, so it's a robotic pair of legs. And they control the robotic legs with that same part of the neural cortex that you use, okay? And after about 6 months, something amazing happened. The body started to regrow the musculature and circulatory system necessary for walking. And after about a year, all 8 patients had voluntary leg movement. The brain had rewired itself so that it could control the legs again. Okay? So that's pretty astounding. This was was done in 2014. The cost per patient was somewhere around $200,000. Today, just a few years later, the cost of that hardware is around $3,000 and falling. That is especially true thanks to the phone. The phone is going to drive demonetization and democratization because now, instead of having to build the hardware, you're building an app. And that's much cheaper and much easier than building hardware, trust me. Let's look at this example. So this is the Accubase 400, AD400. And what it is it's for people that do blood draws, so phlebotomists, okay? And rather than having to try to translate the image of the circulatory system in the human to all of us, this just projects onto the human being their actual vascular system. So now they're seeing the actual blood flow, the actual veins, etc. And it works on any type of skin, from really old people to really young people, from black to white, no matter the skin tone, no matter the lighting condition, which is awesome. This was also implemented in 2014, and it cost $5,000. Today, right at this very minute, each and every one of you can download this app for $4.99 that does the exact same thing. Okay? So now, instead of having to build the hardware, you just build an app. And it's going to revolutionize the world. Really, you can have any superpower you want. You want spidey sense? We already have the tools for that. You want supercognition? We have those tools too. You want to move objects across the room with your own mind? We can do that. But first, we have to fix our interface. This is what's standing in our way. Because if we continue with the human-machine interface that we have right now, this is what our future is going to hold. And I don't know about you, but that looks like a nightmare to me. And in fact, the noise is going to be so deafening that not only are we going to kill our ability to think, we're not going to be able to walk down the street. It's just going to be too overwhelming. We're going to end up in a pile, batteries for the Matrix, right? So something has to change. And it will. We are about here. It's about to launch in a big way, like I said. Things standing in the way of mass adoption are very simple. First, it's a socially acceptable head-mounted display, which we already are seeing solutions to. It's expected that in the next couple of years we'll have head-mounted displays that are no bigger than a pair of sunglasses. Okay, so nothing more than that. And then we'll need to have virtual reality as believable as the real world, which is also closer than you think, because there's this company, Magic Leap, which is rumored to be coming, which have announced that they're coming out with something this year. Now, what's the difference about this technology than all the others that I showed you is that they're using a light field projector, which means full depth of field, full 360 ability to see, which is a lot like how we see the real world now. So it is virtually indistinguishable from the real world. So it's coming, and it's coming fast. My question to you is, how will you extend reality? Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Good, right.
So because we've been short of time, I'm going to go straight to questions rather than have 5 minutes of contemplation. Probably got Jodie here. Lots going on there.
Yeah.
So I'll just come around. Kids, put your hand up.
And I appreciate your energy. I know it's the end of the day, and you've heard a lot of content today. So.
Anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts? Because if you don't, I'm going to have to ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask questions because I'd like you to ask questions. But is anyone who had any thoughts, any fears, excitements, thoughts of how they could integrate this into their business, thoughts of how
any questions about how this might apply to your industry
Yeah.
or your area of expertise? No, I just did such a great job explaining.
Okay, so I'm going to pick on a couple because I know there are a couple of people on this table who put their hand up about you using VRNA already. So tell us a bit about what you already do.
Okay, I'm using. Okay, my name is Paolo. I work in robotics, robotic lawnmowers, actually, which are very stupid machines because they are not using most of this technology, but this year we implemented an augmented reality feature on the robotics. Yeah.
Very interesting.
And what impact? So what is it going to help you do? What is the difference it's going to make?
Basically, it's not incorporated in the machine itself, but we include it in the output that comes with the machine. And so we give owners the ability to measure the size and shape of their loan. And after they did this, we can optimize all the mowing cycles, also related to weather conditions. So we know if grass is growing faster or slower. And so we can optimize the workflow of the machine. This is the way we use augmented reality. But again, we incorporate it in the app rather than
the box.
Yes.
Very smart.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. One thing, Jenny, I wanted to ask was around, you talked mainly about the opportunities, but one of the things that came to my mind was that this stuff looks that's making, there's a fear around technology that's making us more stupid. So because we're basically exporting our intelligence to our machines. So, I mean, is there the risk that because there's an app to do everything, that actually we lose our intelligence, and actually we just assume that it will be outside of us everything? So how does that affect, and are there any other dangers that people should be aware of as this gets developed?
Sure. So I would say that it'll change our intelligence. Like right now, the way that we measure intelligence is our ability to recall facts and figures that we've memorized over time. But that's not really the way this is going to work moving forward. We have an amazing resource called Google that we just ask any questions. I call it the magic oracle 8-ball. Right? You can just ask a question to it and it will tell you the answer. So instead of having to memorize facts and figures, what this does for us is allows us to live heads up in our world. And it takes a lot of the effort, that low-level, busy noise level away from us, so that we can focus on what really makes us human, which is that deep creative thought, human connection to one another, physical presence in the real world, right? And it does it in a global scale. And so to me, it actually accelerates our ability, our intelligence, because it's taking off so many of those things that we actually aren't interested in doing and offloading it to a machine so that we can focus on the things that we're genuinely interested in doing or accomplishing. The thing that you didn't bring up that is really, really critical for us to think about is privacy. So we're going to have a device on your head that will see every single thing that you see. It'll hear everything that you hear, and then some, because it has additional sensors. Now, when I was at Microsoft, I conned all my friends into wearing a GoPro for a week. So they recorded everything that they did for a week. And at first, they were really cautious about what they allowed me to see. They, for example, they took it off before they went to the bathroom. And then they forgot, but they were wearing it. And suddenly I got videos of people going to the bathroom, which, trust me, I did not want to see. But this is what happens, is that you forget that you're wearing these things, and suddenly they're picking up on stuff that you didn't want them to. We are recently working on an artificial intelligence education platform for AR for a company that operates in both France and Germany. And while France was nervous about it, the Germans were outright belligerently angry that we would try to implement something like this because they've had to deal with decades of living under the KGB and being monitored in their every activity. So they were terrified that something could accidentally pick up casual conversations or other things, because what could it be used for in the future? And I'll tell you, under the political climate that I am experiencing today in the US, I can understand their fear. So we have to figure out some way to make sure that we know who is seeing what we see and hearing what we're seeing and hearing, and how they're using that information and why. And it better be pretty valuable to me, the why. Otherwise, I'm not going to put it on my head. So like Bryce mentioned, there's a lot of conversations around how blockchain can be used to secure your privacy and to know who's tapping into your feed and who is not. And that's especially true as we get more and more close to a brain-computer interface, which is an incredibly valuable tool, but has some serious risks to it. Because it's one thing if your computer crashes, it's another thing if it crashes your brain. It's not very terrible. So that's a big concern as well. So I would say those are the number one and two things I'm most afraid of. I can also give you some advice on how to start working in this right now.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Because it seems as though, in my mind, it's going to affect every industry. It's not, it doesn't matter if you're manufacturing, doesn't matter if you're insurance, doesn't matter if you're banking, doesn't matter if you're retail, doesn't matter if you're travel. Actually, this will change everything.
Everything will be affected by this. There's not a single industry that will not be affected. But if you think about it, how many places do you use a computer? If this is going to replace all of your computing devices, it's going to affect every aspect of that world. Yeah? So thinking about that at that kind of a scale, it becomes a little overwhelming. And it might sound a little scary, but I would say that if I asked you in 2005 if you were comfortable carrying a computer with you everywhere you went, you'd say no. But then 2007, the iPhone came out, and suddenly you'd be, what? What are you talking about? Of course I carry a computer with me. So it's going to affect everything. And the ways to get involved right now is there's a number of services that you can use just to start implementing this at your organization. And I highly recommend you start, because this is going to come, like I said, next year is going to be a completely different world. So the ways to start implementing it now is that a lot of people are using their ad buy, their advertising budget, for companies like Meredith. Meredith owns Life, Time, Fortune, all these big publications. And they have an application called LifeXR that you can just do a media buy, and they will help you build an XR application that will run everywhere in the world, on print, in real world, and in stores, to create a retail kind of experience. There's also companies like Blipper that I just showed you, the one that was for you saw the people in the t-shirts. That is being used to build, that is a site, it can be triggered by location or marker, so people are using that to build things like tours of campuses, or let's say that you have a factory and you need your employees to do a certain type of task throughout that factory at different locations. It will automate that process for you. There's also a number of agencies that are popping up that can give you really bespoke solutions, such as there's this company called AGCO, which creates agricultural equipment in Indiana, in the U.S. And they're using Google Enterprise to be able to make it easier for their technicians to work on machines and on the line. So there's so many ways to get your toes in the water and test this technology out and start to figure out how you're going to build it. And it costs a fraction of your ad buy, but amplifies your abilities there. So that might be an interesting place for you to start playing.
And just finally, before we close the session, I imagine one of the benefits of this technology is you can, a lot of things is about trying to convince people through sort of intellect or through an argument, but this is very visual and visceral. So that actually when you want to convince somebody of the potential uses, you can actually allow them to experience. I mean, these technologies allow that experience, and also there are lots of companies already engaging with it and seeing benefit from. So it's not like a future technology.
No, it's right now.
It's right now.
So there's a company called Trigger XR that can help you to build very usable XR applications, and they've been doing some analysis of like people retail experience. And what they found is that whenever somebody engages with the XR versus say a print ad or a TV ad, sales, the conversion rate on those was something around 35%, but the conversion rate on somebody doing the XR was 200%. So it's just a very different experience of that information, and it changes the way you understand what it is that you're being provided.
Great. Okay. Jodie, we're going to have a back in a few minutes. So Jodie, thank you so much. Thank you. So you get another break in a minute. So if we can just go back to the poll just to get some feedback, Jodie, that'd be fantastic.